So we're trying something new this semester where I'm going to try to put all the lectures into small parts on Moodle so you can walk through them at your own pace and as you feel is necessary. What I mean by that is you'll have a reading on the schedule for that week. You'll also have these video presentations. There may also be extra YouTube videos or notes pages that I add in. So whichever of those mediums works best for you to study from, use that. If you find that reading and then going through the videos is really redundant, don't wear yourself out doing both. I will say there may be cases where what I do in the presentation may elaborate more on information that's not in the book. This particular lecture is one of those where certain sections are from the book and certain sections are from other sources that aren't available to you. And then in some cases, there may be stuff that's in the reading that you're still going to be responsible for, even though I'm not going to present on them. So let's start by defining what disability is. We're the adapted kinesiology class, and our target population is people with disabilities. So what does it mean to have a disability? So according to the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is a piece of legislation that we're going to talk about a little bit more in the next unit, the definition is a physical, mental, or cognitive impairment. That's important, so they kind of specify it. But it has to limit one or more life functions or activities. And this has been debated a lot. We'll talk about it a little bit more next week. But what you need to know for now is this definition is meant to be all-inclusive and not at all exclusive. Okay. One of the requirements to be able to have accommodations through the Americans with Disabilities Act is that the individual must have a record of the impairment or be regarded as having an impairment. So a record would mean that they went to a doctor and a physician has diagnosed them with something. Being regarded as having an impairment may be something that's just really a visual effect. So I don't know if you've ever seen people that have just like visual deformities that may affect their ability to integrate socially. That might account as a disability under the ADA. As far as the ADA is concerned, it's all ages, so from birth through death. And it pertains to anything that is publicly available, including buildings, communication services, transportation, education, all those things. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next unit. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act lists a bunch of different types of disabilities in their definition. But the main thing is that whatever the disability is specifically affects education and requires some other service or accommodation in order for that person to be able to effectively learn. So the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is specifically pertaining to public education. So because of that, the age range is significantly limited to between 3 and 21 years old. It may seem like it's very rare to find somebody with a disability, and that may depend on where you're located, but actually it's fairly common. About 20% of all Americans have a disability. That's 1 in 5. The unfortunate thing is that the majority of people that have disabilities aren't participating in regular physical activity. Some of that's because they had a bad experience when they were younger and now are kind of afraid to participate in sports. Some of that's because nobody's ever taught them how. Some of that's because of accessibility issues in gyms and in recreation programs where people aren't being accommodating or making that available to different people with various disabilities. And so that's one of the problems that we're going to try to prevent and try to make better, to improve, because in actuality, even though it's not common for people with disabilities to engage in physical activity, they actually benefit the most, right? Because they have the most to gain. There are 2 ways of looking at disability. One is the medical model and one is the social construction model. Both are just really referring to your perspective on people with disabilities and society and our culture in general. So the medical model would say that any issue that revolves around the disability is directly the result of the disease or injury that caused it. So if you have a problem, it's the result of the disease or injury. It's not the result of other people. It's not the result of the environment or the culture, none of that. Okay, so the problem is within the person. The social construct model takes the problem outside of that individual and says the problem is not that I have a disability. It's not that I have difficulty walking. It's not that I have difficulty talking or that I have difficulty seeing. The problem is that you didn't make a Braille sign for me to be able to navigate. It's that you don't speak American Sign Language. It's that there's not an elevator available in the building. So the problem is outside of the person. And if those problems were fixed, say we added an elevator, say we made sure there was somebody on staff that knew how to speak sign language, or an interpreter could be available if we needed one, then there wouldn't be a problem anymore. So in a sense, what the social construct model does beyond making the person more valuable, it makes the problem fixable. And so that's something that's important to remember and think about. And whether, think about these two, the medical model and the social construct model, you fit into one of these. Before today, you fit into one of these, and probably most people fit into the medical model. But what we want you to start doing, because you're going to be a professional and we want you to see problems as fixable, as correctable, as overcomable. I don't even know if any of those were words. We want you to kind of lean towards the social construct model. Okay.